Black belt asked a black cleaning lady to fight for fun. What happened next left everyone speechless. "Hey, you there cleaning? How about a quick demonstration?" shouted Brandon Carter from the center of the tatami mat, his black belt gleaming under the gym's fluorescent lights. "I bet you've never seen a real fight in your life, right?" Lisa Thompson stopped scrubbing the floor and slowly looked up. At 38, she had been working as a cleaner at that gym for only 2 weeks, always arriving after hours when the students had already left. But on that Thursday, the advanced class had gone on longer than usual. "I don't want to get in the way, sir. I'm just finishing up here so you can continue," Lisa replied calmly. Returning to scrubbing a stubborn stain on the floor, Brandon let out a theatrical laugh that echoed through the gym. "Guys, look at this. The woman is afraid to even step on the mat." The 8 students present laughed nervously. Some clearly uncomfortable with the situation. What Brandon didn't know was that Lisa had spent the last 15 years trying to completely forget who she really was. 15 years since she left the ring, after an incident that changed her life forever. 15 years keeping a secret that not even her teenage son knew about. "Come on, woman," Brandon continued, approaching her with that arrogant smile he used to intimidate beginners. "Just a basic demonstration. I bet you don't even know how to guard properly. How about showing my students the difference between someone who trains and someone who just cleans?" Lisa felt that familiar sensation in her chest, like a dormant muscle being awakened after years of inactivity. Her eyes met Brandon's briefly, and for a split second, something passed between them that made the instructor take an involuntary step back. "Just an educational demonstration," Brandon insisted, now trying to hide the sudden uncertainty in his voice. "Nothing too serious, just to show beginners why it's important to respect the martial art." Lisa set the bucket on the floor and stood up slowly. Her movements had a fluidity that was strange for someone who had supposedly never stepped on a tatami mat before. Around the gym, the students stopped training, realizing that something was happening. "All right," Lisa said finally, her voice as calm as the surface of a lake before a storm. "But when we're done, you're going to apologize to all of them for turning the tatami into a circus." Brandon laughed, but this time the sound came out a little forced. "Apologize? You'll be the one apologizing to the floor when you meet it." What none of those people knew was that Lisa Thompson was once Lisa Silent Tornado Thompson, 5-time world champion in mixed martial arts. She had retired at the height of her career after an accident that cost the life of her best friend and training partner. Since then, she had sworn never to fight again. But some promises are made to be broken when dignity is at stake. Under everyone's contemptuous gaze, Lisa stood firm, like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. If you're enjoying this story of overcoming adversity and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. To find out how a simple moment of prejudice would turn into the most humiliating lesson of Brandon Carter's life. Brandon adjusted his black belt with a theatrical gesture, clearly savoring every second of attention. "Everyone, come closer. You're about to see a practical demonstration of why there is a hierarchy in the world of martial arts." Lisa watched as the 8 students formed a semicircle around the tatami mat. Some seemed eager for the demonstration, others visibly uncomfortable. A young Asian woman with her hair tied back whispered something to her classmate next to her, who just shook her head in disapproval. "Look, everyone," Brandon continued, gesturing dramatically. "Here we have a perfect example of someone who never understood that there are appropriate places for certain types of people. Elite gyms are not for, well, you know." Lisa felt that familiar twinge in her chest, the same one she had felt 15 years ago, when she heard similar comments about female fighters who didn't look like champions. The difference was that now at 38, she had learned to turn anger into fuel for something much more powerful than punches. "Sensei Brandon," the young Asian woman interrupted timidly, "maybe we can continue our normal training." "It's getting late." "Shh, Jenny-chin, are you questioning my teaching methodology?" Brandon cut her off sharply. "Sit down and watch. You'll learn more in the next 5 minutes than in a month of conventional training." Lisa noticed how Brandon used the girl's full name, a clear demonstration of authority. She also recognized the look of fear in her eyes, the same look she saw in the mirror 2 decades ago when she woke up in a panic, remembering the accident that took the life of Rebecca Hammer Johnson, her best friend and training partner. Rebecca had died because of her. It was that simple. A sequence of blows that Lisa had delivered with excessive force during sparring. Rebecca fell, hit her head on the floor awkwardly, and never woke up again. The investigation concluded that it was an accident, but Lisa knew the truth. She had lost control because of the pressure and racist comments from the audience that night. So cleaning lady Brandon teased, "How about showing my students how to do a basic guard? Or is that too complicated for someone who only knows how to push a mop?" Laughter echoed through the gym, but Lisa remained motionless. Her eyes closed briefly, and for a moment she was back in that ring in Las Vegas, hearing the same kind of comments that preceded the tragedy that changed her life forever. "What's the problem? Are you scared?" Brandon insisted, now circling Lisa like a predator. "Or are you just going to stand there like a lamppost, like you do with your mop all day?" That's when Brandon made his first fatal mistake. He pushed Lisa lightly on the shoulder. A seemingly harmless touch, but one that carried all the arrogance of someone who had never faced real consequences for his actions. Lisa absorbed the push without moving an inch. Her feet remained planted on the ground like oak roots. And Brandon felt as if he had tried to push a concrete wall. The instructor's arrogant smile faltered for a split second. "Interesting," Lisa murmured, more to herself than to Brandon. "It's been a while since someone tried to provoke me like that." There was something in Lisa's voice that changed the atmosphere. It wasn't threat or anger. It was the frightening calm of someone who had walked through much darker valleys and emerged transformed. Brandon, unable to interpret the signs of danger, doubled down. "Did you hear that, everyone? She thinks she's interesting. How about we show her the difference between thinking and knowing?" What Brandon didn't realize was that every humiliating word, every gesture, was awakening something in Lisa that had been dormant for 2 decades. Not anger or a thirst for revenge, but something much more dangerous. The crystal-clear memory of who she really was when she stopped hiding, Jenny. Chen watched the scene with growing discomfort. There was something about the way the cleaning lady breathed, how her muscles tensed almost imperceptibly. That reminded her of the documentaries about large predators she watched on the Discovery Channel. The calm before the attack. Last chance. "Buddy," Brandon announced, now clearly irritated by Lisa's lack of response. "Either you accept the demonstration like a woman, or I'll call security to escort you out of here. And guess what? You lose your job too." Lisa slowly opened her eyes. When her gaze met Brandon's, the instructor felt a chill run down his spine. As if he had just awakened a dragon he thought was a harmless lizard. "Okay," Lisa finally said, her voice low but laden with an authority that instantly silenced everyone present. "But when we're done, I want you to explain to your students why you turned a place of learning into a circus of humiliation." Brandon laughed, but this time the sound came out nervous. "Explain? Man, you're going to have a lot to explain when you're on the ground." What none of them knew was that Lisa had spent the last 15 years not only running from her past, but perfecting an emotional control that had transformed her former destructive anger into something much more refined and devastatingly effective. Each new humiliation only fueled a silent strength within her, a cold determination that her former opponents knew well, but that Brandon was about to discover in the worst possible way. Brandon assumed his favorite fighting stance, the same one he had used to intimidate hundreds of beginners over the years. Feet shouldered width apart, fists clenched at chest height. Weight slightly forward, the classic position of someone who had learned martial arts in controlled environments against predictable opponents. Lisa stood motionless for a few seconds, simply observing. Her eyes scanned Brandon from head to toe, automatically cataloging every technical detail. The high guard that left his ribs exposed, the unstable base that compromised his balance, the excessive tension in his shoulders that telegraphed every move before it even began. "Still waiting?" Brandon taunted, hopping slightly. "Or are you just going to stand there like a lamppost?" That's when Lisa did something no one expected. She started to move. It wasn't a dramatic change, just a subtle repositioning of her feet. A slight lowering of her center of gravity, her shoulders relaxing into a perfectly horizontal line. But for those who knew what to look for, the transformation was instantaneous and frightening. Jenny Chen felt a chill run down her spine. During 2 years of studying sports biomechanics, she had analyzed hundreds of hours of footage of great fighters. What she had just witnessed was the transition from an ordinary person to a natural predator. A change as subtle as it was devastating. Interesting, Brandon muttered, his confidence wavering for the first time. There was something about the way Lisa occupied the space now that awakened all his instincts for self-preservation. Lisa took a step forward. Brandon instinctively backed away. The movement was so involuntary, so primitive, that several students noticed a black belt backing away from a cleaning lady. The power dynamic in the room had completely shifted. "Problem?" Lisa asked softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that made everyone fall silent. Brandon felt the blood rush to his cheeks. His reputation was being questioned in front of his own students. He couldn't back down now. Even though every fiber of his being was screaming to stop and apologize, no problem. Brandon replied, forcing a smile. "Just admiring your posture. Did someone teach you that on YouTube?" The joke fell flat. No one laughed. The tension in the room had become almost palpable. "Actually," Lisa said calmly, "I learned it at a place called the National Academy in Las Vegas. Maybe you've heard of it." Brandon frowned. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Las Vegas. What kind of weekend course did you take there? Jenny Chen discreetly took her cell phone out of her pocket and quickly typed National Academy Las Vegas Martial Arts. What she found made her blood run cold. This was no ordinary preparatory course. It was where the greatest MMA world champions of the last 3 decades had trained. "Brandon," Lisa continued, her voice still calm. "Last chance. Apologize to Jenny for questioning her right to speak. Apologize to your students for turning this place into a circus. And most importantly, apologize to yourself for becoming exactly the kind of person that martial arts should teach you not to be." The offer of clemency hung in the air like smoke. Brandon could have chosen humility. He could have acknowledged that he had crossed the line. He could have preserved what little dignity he had left. Instead, Brandon's first punch was technically perfect. A quick, precise jab, executed exactly as he had learned in the manuals. It was the kind of strike that worked against 99% of the people he had fought over the years. Lisa was not in the 99%. The movement was so fast, so fluid that half of those present couldn't even process what had happened. Lisa simply wasn't where Brandon's fist had aimed. Her body had slid sideways like water around a rock. And suddenly, Brandon was off balance, his arm extended in the air. "Nice try," Lisa commented softly, already repositioned and perfectly balanced. "Clean technique, adequate speed, but you telegraphed the move with your right shoulder." Brandon spun frantically, trying to locate his opponent. How had someone moved so fast? "Beginner's luck," he muttered, more to himself than to Lisa. The second attack came in quick succession. Jab, straight hook. 3 punches chained together with the precision of someone who had practiced the combination thousands of times. It was his favorite sequence. The one he used to finish sparring sessions and impress beginners again. Lisa simply wasn't there. This time Jenny managed to follow the movement. Lisa had ducked slightly, allowing the jab to pass over her head by inches. The straight punch found only air as she leaned back in an impossible curve. And when Brandon threw the hook with all his strength, Lisa took a small step back, causing the fist to pass millimeters from her chin. "Interesting combination," Lisa observed, still breathing normally. "It works well against people who stand still, but you're leaving your entire left side completely exposed." After the hook, Brandon was starting to sweat. This wasn't normal. He had landed thousands of punches in his life, and now he couldn't land a single one on a woman who supposedly had never fought before. Jenny watched the scene with growing professional fascination. There was something about Lisa's economy of movement, her controlled breathing, her calm presence that radiated restrained power, something that reminded her of the great masters she had studied in historical videos. "Stop dancing and fight," Brandon shouted, launching an even more aggressive sequence. That's when Lisa decided the demonstration had gone on long. Brandon's third attack, a desperate combination of punches and kicks, once again found only air. But this time, something different happened. When Brandon recovered after missing all his blows, Lisa was inexplicably closer. How? Brandon whispered, realizing he had completely lost control of the distance. Brandon, Lisa said softly, now an arm's length away. Want to know the difference between someone who learned to fight in gyms and someone who learned in professional rings? Before Brandon could answer, Lisa did something that defied everything those present thought they knew about physics. Without appearing to use any force, without any sudden or aggressive movements, she simply touched Brandon's chest with the palm of her right hand. Brandon flew. He wasn't pushed or knocked down. He was literally propelled backward as if struck by an invisible wave. His feet left the ground. He traveled almost 2 meters through the air and landed on his back with an impact that made everyone in the room hold. Their breath, the silence that followed, was absolute. Brandon lay on the floor for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. There was no pain, just the irresistible force of someone operating on a level completely different from anything he had ever known. "That's impossible," Brandon muttered. Trying to get up, Jenny Chen had stopped breathing. In 2 years of studying martial arts, she had never witnessed such a controlled and devastating display of power. There was no brutality, no anger, just the clinical application of a technique she had only seen in legends. That's when Jenny realized she was witnessing something historic. Not just a lesson in humility, but the resurgence of a legend the world had forgotten. There on that ordinary tatami mat, a force of nature had silently revealed itself. And now everyone present would have to decide what to do with this explosive truth, under everyone's astonished gaze. Lisa remained serene, as if she had just demonstrated something as natural as breathing. But Jenny noticed a different gleam in her eyes, not one of violence or revenge, but of someone who had finally found a reason to stop hiding. "Actually," Lisa said softly, reaching out to help Brandon up, "it's quite simple once you understand leverage, timing, and energy transfer. Principles I learned during a 22-year professional career." Brandon ignored the outstretched hand and got up on his own, his legs still shaking. A 22-year professional career. "In what?" It was Jenny who answered, her voice almost a whisper. "You don't understand who she is, do you?" Everyone turned to her as she held her cell phone, still displaying the results of her search. On the screen, dozens of articles, photos, and videos confirmed what their instincts had already realized. Lisa Thompson, Jenny read aloud, also known as the Silent Tornado, 5-time world mixed martial arts champion. Considered one of the best technical fighters in history. Retired, undefeated, after a 22-year career following an accident that resulted in the death of her training partner, Lisa added calmly. The impact of the words hit the room like a bomb. Brandon felt his face go pale as reality hit him. He had challenged a living martial arts legend. He had publicly humiliated someone who could have knocked him out with a casual move. 5-time world champion. Brandon stammered, all his arrogance evaporating instantly. Lisa nodded silently. "I retired at 29. Since then, I've worked whatever job I could find. Cleaning, maintenance. Simple jobs, simple life. No spotlight, no cameras, no need to prove anything to anyone." The transformation in Brandon was instantaneous and painful to watch. The arrogant man was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the magnitude of his ignorance. "I didn't know," Brandon whispered. If you had known, would you have treated me with respect?" Lisa interrupted gently. "But would you still humiliate some other janitor? Another worker who didn't have the credentials to defend themselves?" The question cut deeper than any physical blow. Brandon realized that Lisa had put her finger on the root of his real problem. It wasn't ignorance of credentials, but the fundamental arrogance that made him believe he could humiliate people based on their professions. Jenny stepped forward, her voice firm. "Sensei Brandon, for 2 years I trained at this academy, out of respect for your experience. But what I witnessed today was not teaching. It was bullying, disguised as instruction." Other students began to murmur in agreement. The revelation about Lisa had completely changed everyone's perspective on what they had witnessed. "What's more," Jenny continued, raising her cell phone, I recorded the entire demonstration for my research on discrimination in sports. I'm sure the martial arts community will be very interested to see how a black belt treats ordinary workers." Brandon's blood ran cold. His reputation, built over years, was about to be destroyed by a video that showed his arrogance being exposed by a legend he didn't recognize, Jenny. "Please," Brandon stammered, cold sweat running down his forehead. "You don't have to. I was just trying to educate." Lisa interrupted, her voice still calm but laden with an authority that silenced everyone. "Brandon, in my 22-year professional career, I fought against the best in the world. Some tried to intimidate me with force, others with psychology. But do you know what I never encountered in any professional ring?" Brandon shook his head, unable to speak. Someone who used their position of authority to humiliate innocent people for fun. "That, Brandon, is something I only encountered outside the ring. People who confuse strength with cruelty, respect with fear." The other students exchanged awkward glances. Some began to gather their things, clearly losing respect for the instructor they followed. "Jenny," said a blond young man in his early 20s, "can you send me a copy of that video? I think my father, who runs the State Martial Arts Association, would be interested. And my mother is a journalist for the Denver Post," added a red-haired girl. "She loves stories about forgotten champions and social injustice." Brandon felt the world crumbling around him. It wasn't just his reputation at that gym. It was his entire martial arts career that was being put at risk. "Lisa," Brandon finally said, his voice laden with a humility no one there had ever heard before, "I sincerely apologize to you, to Jenny, to everyone here. I have no excuse for my behavior." Lisa nodded, accepting the apology with the same grace with which she had dominated the physical confrontation. Appreciated. But apologies are only the first step. The question is, what are you going to do differently from now on? Brandon looked around the room, seeing his students with new eyes. Some seemed disappointed in his behavior, others clearly reevaluating everything they thought they knew about respect and hierarchy. "I will change," Brandon promised. "It will take time, but I will change." That's when Jenny asked a question that surprised everyone. Double quotes, "Miss Thompson, would you consider teaching again? Because I think we could all learn a lot more from someone who understands that true strength comes with responsibility." Lisa smiled. The first genuine smile anyone had seen from her that night. Maybe, but not to teach fighting techniques. To teach something much more important, that respect is not earned with belts or titles, but with character. Jenny discreetly saved the video and sent it to her research folder. In less than an hour, it would be in the hands of sports journalists and martial arts authorities. The world would finally know not only that Lisa "Silent Tornado" Thompson was alive and well, but also how she had chosen to use her legendary strength. As Brandon fully absorbed the most humiliating lesson of his life, one question hung in the air. Could one night of forced humility really transform decades of arrogance? Or would an even more profound change be necessary for true justice to be served? What none of them knew yet was that this moment captured on video was about to go viral in a way that would permanently change not only their lives, but the entire culture of the gym and the local martial arts community. Sometimes justice arrives quietly, but its echoes reverberate forever. 3 months later, the gym had been completely transformed. Lisa Thompson was no longer just the cleaning lady. Jenny Chen had convinced the gym owner to hire her as an instructor, specializing in advanced techniques in martial arts. Philosophy Brandon Mitchell lost half of his students in the first week after the incident. The video Jenny had discreetly recorded spread across social media, showing a black belt being humiliated by a simple cleaning lady. His reputation in the martial arts community was ruined. "Sensei Lisa," Jenny said after a class on respect and humility, "thank you for teaching me that true strength doesn't need to be displayed to be recognized." Lisa smiled as she organized the equipment. "The best lesson I can teach is simple. Never judge someone by their profession or appearance. Everyone has stories that may surprise us." Brandon continued teaching at a smaller gym. But now, with the humility forced by public shame, he had learned the hard way that arrogance comes at a price. The other students who witnessed the demonstration spread the story. The gym gained a new reputation, a place where mutual respect was truly practiced, not just preached. Lisa discovered that teaching again brought a satisfaction she had forgotten. Not combat techniques, but lessons about character, respect, and true inner strength. The perfect revenge, she reflected during a class, is not to destroy your opponent. It is to show that greatness comes from character, not titles. Sometimes justice comes quietly, like a storm that transforms everything without making a sound. Lisa proved that true revenge is not to destroy those who underestimate you, but to demonstrate that excellence transcends prejudice. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories about how extraordinary people turn humiliation into triumph, proving that character always wins over arrogance.